Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. From the right, I'm Gary Polland.
And from the left, I'm David Jones.
Tonight, we welcome the runoff candidates for Houston City Council at Large positions 2 and 5. First up is Andrew C. Burks, Jr., one of the runoff candidates for at large position 2. And his opponent, also successfully getting in the runoff in this big candidate race, Kristi Thibaut. I think I got that right.
Very good.
Okay,
yes, you
thank you. Runoff candidate also for position 2. And I think, David, if I recall, they were pretty closely bunched in the vote as a percentage.
Let's just find out what they have to say, Gary, rather than listening to you.
It's probably a good point.
So, Christy, ladies first, did you lead or not going into the runoff, and what do you have to do to prevail, and why are you in it?
Those are a lot of questions,
Yeah.
David. Okay, well, I'll start with, I think I was about a percentage point behind, but the top 3 were closely bunched together. As for why I'm running, I'll just go for why I'm running. We'll skip everything else. But I'm running because I believe in good government. And frankly, I think we have some challenging times ahead. And I think we have to work together, and we have to really find out what it is the citizens want to pay for. For me, I'm in favor, my big issues are public safety and infrastructure, because number one, being a mom, I think public safety and making sure our neighborhoods are safe for our kids is very important. It's very close and near and dear to my heart. But the other thing is, if we are going to want to continue to grow our economy in the city of Houston, if we don't have great infrastructure, if we don't have a great police department, we're not going to have anybody that wants to live here, because we're not going to have a great quality of life. So those are kind of the 2 issues that I'm going to be pushing going forward.
Andrew, why are you running?
I'm running because we have a situation in Houston where we are lacking in a lot of jobs. We are losing jobs in Houston going out to the county, as well as we're losing our tax base in Houston. And we have to have someone on council that will bring about make the difference, make the changes, come in with creative ideas. We need that, because the old way is just not working. What we did in this race to get in the lead, we went out and we worked the early vote very strongly, and then we came back with the regular general vote, and we led it all the way. And just to show you something how well we did with very little money, because we're in these times like this is why they need to vote for me, is we spent $6,000 and won this whole race from beginning to end. We led this entire race. So when you can do something like that with very little money and be very creative, this is the type of candidate I believe the city of Houston is looking for. We can deliver the city services, we can actually take care of our infrastructure, and at the same time make everyone feel safe, bringing more jobs and creating more jobs in the city.
Now, Kristi, being an at-large council person is different than being a district council person, because your responsibilities, I guess, are different. How do you see it being different to the voters?
Well, I don't think the voters actually see the difference. That's a technical issue where people that are district members tend to be a little territorial, and they want to make sure that they're that we go to them for district issues. But I would say that the best thing that you can do is make sure that you work with your particular council member if you have an issue in a particular district, and don't go around them, because that gets them a little bit upset. But honestly, you have a duty to make sure that your citizens that call you, that their concerns are being addressed. And that's the way I've always focused my office on. I'm a former legislator, and I had incredible constituent services because I truly believe in it. So I'm going to make sure that anybody that calls my office is addressed, their issues are addressed.
We had a lot of people in this race, Mr. Burks. Where are other candidates who lost? Where are they going in the race? How many of them are supporting you? What endorsements do you have that you want to brag about?
Well, the endorsements of the citizens of Houston.
Is that enough? Is that a zero?
That is a big endorsement, because I led the race. I want to endorse them. I've been sending out thank you cards to everyone. I put out signs on the street saying thank you for supporting me, and let's do it again. Let's finish it up. So the idea is that I'm saying thank you to those citizens. That's the greatest endorsement I could ever receive.
So did you get endorsements?
Yes, I did. Thank you for asking that. There were 10 people in this race, so it's Mr. Burks did extremely well, but I'm endorsed by the Houston Chronicle, Houston Police and Fire. I have 3 of my former members that were in this race that have endorsed me: David Robinson, Jennifer Renee Poole, and Bo Fraga. I've also recently today got the Houston Apartment Association. I've gotten so many endorsements that I can't name them all. And frankly, some of my former colleagues have endorsed me too, including Senator Rodney Ellis and Senator Mario Gallegos. So I've gotten quite a few endorsements reaching all across the city, all races, both Republican and Democratic endorsements.
D's and R's.
D's and R's. Well, because you have to be that kind of person that can reach across the aisle. And I am a former legislator, so it's hard to get around the D and the R. But one of the things is I was Freshman Legislator of the Year because of my ability to work across the aisle. And I have an open door policy, and I like for everybody to come in and discuss the issues, and then we work it out together.
Andrew, the city has had financial problems, suffering like all of us have with the Obama economy. Whether you accept that characterization or not, what are your ideas of how the city deals with that going forward, providing essential services in a period of tight money?
It's a good question. Gary, what I want to do is we need to take whatever money comes in from Washington, D.C. and use it to encourage people to go into business. The mayor has a Renew Houston plan, and she also has Houston First plan. Those are good programs. However, when we don't encourage people who are in Houston who have been laid off and cannot work, we don't encourage them to go into business for themselves and create a vehicle for them to do that. The city of Houston has right now an incubator program that is really not working. We need to make sure that that works. Too many federal dollars come into our city to be used and are not used for the purposes they're for. And a lot of our people hurt and mistreated behind that. Now, let me go back to something else that Kristi just said. I'm a pastor, and I don't ask you if you're a Republican or Democrat when I begin to get down on my knees and pray for you. This is a nonpartisan race. This is a race where everyone needs to be treated. Your next door neighbor needs his garbage picked up. We need to make sure that garbage is picked up because we don't want to see it out there the day after garbage has come. So it's one of those things where we can get a chance to work all together. And that's one thing that I do represent is bringing everyone together and doing this. When my neighbor is not working and he's unemployed, that's hurting me because I'm help paying for him. I'm subsidizing his lifestyle at that point there. So I want to make sure.
We have an issue here that you just raised with us, and that is the D's and R's thing.
Okay.
You're a former state representative as a
Yes, sir.
Democrat.
Yes, sir.
You announced just a while ago that you have a number of Democratic endorsers. All right. Mr. Burks, I read, has Gary's Texas Conservative Review and a highly
He did the
ranked
first round.
You have a highly ranked review, and you're seeking the support of Mr. Hotze, the Republican manager of votes.
I didn't know I was seeking his support.
Well, in 2009 you had it, and I assume that you sought it for some reason.
No, I didn't
So
seek
are
it
you
then.
identifying yourself as the Republican in this race?
Let me explain something to you. And David, you know as well as I do, I ran for party chair in 1990. I also ran for party chair against Jerry Breinberg when he was selected to replace the outgoing party chair. And you know I wrote the blueprint to Democratic Party victory where all the Democratic clubs are going. So, you know, when you begin to ask a question like that, and you know my background better than anyone else knows my background, I am a Democrat. However, this is a nonpartisan race, and we must make sure that we keep it nonpartisan. What's going on in Washington, D.C. right now is nothing compared to what we need to do in Houston. Politics is local. This is where it starts. This is where it ends for most people. They don't get a chance to go to Washington to lobby. They come to City Hall and ask questions, and they come to City Hall and ask about why can't they get this and why can't they get that done. So politics is local, and we need to understand that when you drive down the street, it's not a Republican street or a Democrat street, it's the streets of Houston.
But you have to go where the votes are, is all I'm asking, Christie, is where are you going to get your votes? Where do you see Mr. Burks going to get his votes in a runoff?
Wow. Well, I don't
I'm
like
going
to.
to go get them, too, as soon as you tell me.
Well, I don't always like to tip my hat, but you know, I think the first round I was very successful because I went after women voters, and I did extremely well with women voters. I expect to do extremely well again, and runoffs tend to be more female than even general. Then the first round will be even more women friendly. So I think I start off there. I'm going to bring back C voters. They're good voters. They vote all the time. So I intend to take a majority of those voters as well. So I think coupled with the fact that I'll have Latino support, I'll probably have Asian support, women support, progressive support, I think that I will prevail. But it's going to be a close race. So and Andrew's a formidable opponent. So.
All right, now let me ask this, and this is, I think we're down to the last 5 minutes. Time flies, we're having fun. Andrew and Christie's on her website, she talks about not sacrificing core city services, I guess, as we deal with the tight money that the city has. What is your concept of what are core city services? And then Christie will, of course, ask you the same.
Core city services, police and fire, garbage pickup, public works, that's core to me. I am so sick and tired of driving down the streets of Houston and have to get my wheels aligned every other week. It's just horrible. It's horrible when you see some asphalt put in over a hole to cover up a hole, and it's now a big hump in the road or whatever. So it just hurts your car. It hurts everything around us. So, and then some holes are not replaced, not filled up, and so therefore we have blowouts and accidents and things of that nature there. Core city services are what we use every day. We take for granted our water, core city services. How good is our water, and how well are we doing with it? The environment, the air, those to me are core city services, and we need to do those things.
Christie?
I would pretty much agree with that. I would include infrastructure, though, and drainage, and certain other particular issues that are very important. I think with the drought, we've seen a whole other effect with the lack of taking care of our infrastructure. As we've seen all the water main line breaks. We're used to the opposite in particular. So I think that that's a particularly core service that we really need to focus on going forward. So I would agree. It's Houston Police, it's fire, it's garbage pickup.
What about drainage? You just mentioned drainage.
Yes,
there is
I
a
did.
little matter called the drainage fee.
Yes.
I understand that maybe you two have taken positions on that you can talk about. I know that Gary was for the drainage fee. I assume that you have his Texas Conservative Review. That means you must have been for it, but y'all can discuss that. Drainage fee, up or down?
No, go ahead. You can start.
In the beginning, I was against the drainage fee. My leaders that were on council that I put before me, my district council member and also 2 at-large council members advised me that I should be against the drainage fee. After I got into this race and began to understand the drainage fee and what the intent was and got promises, now we got to make sure, I'm on council now to make sure those promises are kept. Well, the underserved areas will be served first. That's what my main concern is, because in front of my house it looks like Lake Livingston. So I want to make sure that these areas are taken care of first before we go into other areas and not use that money correctly and wisely. Also, I want to make sure that the jobs in which this drainage fee is about to bring about, that we have the people in our city, Houston first, to be able to get jobs, and the jobs are created. Or we can make, people can make a good living. This is a 20-year project, just about, I believe it is 20 years. And so this is something good for the city.
So he was against it, now he's for it?
Yes.
Actually, that's very interesting, because everywhere we've been on the campaign trail that we've all been together talking about the drainage fee, he's always said that he was against the drainage fee. And that's not me. You can just ask anybody that was part of the other 8 that were in this race. And so I must have misunderstood then when he was...
What's your position?
Well, I've always said that I've been in favor of the drainage fee. I voted for it. It had some problems when they rolled it out. Promising everybody that it would only be $5 was a big mistake. Most people know that that was never going to happen. But frankly, we needed it. In my legislative district, we had so many areas that were flooding that it was something that we needed to address then. It's something that we continue to need to address. So frankly, I think I was in favor of it. I continue to be in favor of it. The voters have spoken. So going forward, I want to make sure that we do the best job in implementing it in the fairest way that we can possibly.
Do you both agree we should not allow diversions from infrastructure and drainage, so we rebuild the streets or build the streets, we take care of drainage, we don't build like hike and bike trails and some other things that have tried to creep in and take this money?
No, I mean, it's specifically, this is when we start to get in trouble. As a legislator, people are usually in favor of funds that are designated if they're used for their intended purposes. We start getting in trouble when we start rating these for other things. We all like hike and bike trails, they're great, but this is for drainage. So we need to keep it for drainage, for infrastructure, for keeping up our streets. Who doesn't like a hike and bike trail? Everybody does. But at the end of the day, this is when the voters get really upset. Is when you start, I learned that in the legislature when they started diverting the sales tax for other things, and also the system's benefits fund.
Yep, but that was fun.
Sorry, you got the last word. Actually, I get the last word. Thank you for coming. You were both very good. I think we have a good choice here. Next up is the runoff candidates for at-large position 5. Make sure you vote in this race, folks.
And I need your votes.
And I would love to.
Welcome back. Tonight we welcome the runoff candidates for at-large position 5 in the Houston City of Council elections December 10th. First, Jack Christie and his opponent, Councilwoman Jolanda Jo Jones. David, they're here, and I'm excited to have both of them.
Yeah, see if they're excited whenever they leave, okay? So, Jack Christie, you're the challenger. You have to tell us, why is it so hard for you to beat Jolanda Jones, apparently? Runoff number 2 coming up.
No, last time he lost by, I don't know, a couple hundred votes.
Yeah, you can tell us. What is so...
Actually, lost by more than that.
Okay.
Why is it so imperative that you take out Jolanda Jones, and what skills are you going to bring to council that she's not offering?
Well, 2 years ago, I won Harris County, and I just offered my public service record for the city of Houston. I think that we didn't win it because of some precincts out in Fort Bend County. And I offered then that we'd do 3 times better job, and this time I think we can do 10 times better job.
Maybe you get to answer, Jolanda Jones. What is it about your council service that's so that he has such vigorous objection to?
You'd have to ask him. I actually won the last time. I am council member Jolanda Jo Jones, and I actually won the entire city. And Fort Bend, whether you like it or not, is a part of the city of Houston. And I believe the reason I have continued to win is because, 1, I focus on jobs and the economy here. 2, I am the watchdog for fiscal responsibility and governmental accountability. And 3, I'm the voice for people most often left out at city council. And I believe people are tired of business as usual, and I'm not the business as usual candidate. So that is what I bring to city council, and that is why I believe I'm running for my 3rd and final term, and that is why I believe the citizens will reelect me to my 3rd and final term.
You promise it's going to be your final term?
Well, there's term limits, so yeah.
Yeah, she'll have to find something else to run for. Well, Jack, let's talk about City of Houston. We're dealing with an economic crisis, just like all of us are in our everyday life. So revenues to the city are down. Tough decisions have to be made. In your mind, what are the priorities that the city needs to make sure are fully funded?
Well, I think a successful economy is your eventual answer to it, but we should focus on our police, our fire, the safety of our individuals, but also there's ways of stimulating that economy with bringing jobs to Houston. You know, we have 17 sister cities throughout the world, and it'd be an excellent opportunity to bring those to Houston. We've got a good basis for the economy, but if you run it efficiently, spend the taxpayer dollars wisely, this will continue to be a great city, but it can be a lot better.
So she's claiming to be the watchdog. You don't have any challenge to that claim that she's making, do you?
That's self-proclaimed. I think I've got a 20-year record of being very fiscally conservative as far as spending taxpayers' dollars wisely. And I think there's limited role of city government, state government, and federal government that we shouldn't take on things that weren't in the initial charter of the city.
Jolanda, in order to accomplish things on city council, you have to build coalitions because you're only one. If you're a member, you got one vote. You got to deal with a strong mayor. How have you been effective in advancing your vision for the city and bringing together coalitions there?
Well, I've done that, but I'd like to go really quickly to the fiscal watchdog. I'll give you an example of where I saved over $200,000 plus a 15% governmental discount on one truck. I found that. So my record on council is not self-proclaimed, it's actual accomplishments. But insofar as building coalitions, I'll give you a perfect example. With the water rate increase, there were 4 of my colleagues, in addition to me, who were going to take my lead on how I voted. If I voted yes, they were going to vote yes. If I voted no, they were going to vote no, because I was concerned about seniors, I was concerned about the poor, and I was concerned about the disabled. And I was concerned that if they could not afford their water bills, that they would have it turned off, and then that's a health and safety standard. So I was able to negotiate with the mayor and my colleagues for $30 million over 2 years at $15 million a year for a fund for people who could not afford their water bills, including owners of multifamily units, apartments, because over 50% of our citizens or Houstonians live in apartments. So if I vote no, then it fails. If I vote yes, then it passes. The mayor initially said she wasn't going to fund anything that costed money, but she found the $30 million. My colleagues voted with me. It passed. So that's just one example of me.
So you voted for the rate increase for water and sewer.
I voted. Here's the deal. The mayor had her votes, right, except for there were 4 who were concerned about poor, disabled. And so if I vote no, it fails. If I vote yes, and I was extremely concerned about the poor. And I did not want for it to pass and them then not have a pool.
No, I understand,
So ultimately, because of the numbers, ultimately, I had 4 people who voted with me, which is a coalition, and it passed. So
okay.
I can give you an example.
Let me finish, David. My question was, did you vote for the rate increase? Did you think it was needed? Because my follow-up question is going to be, were you around when Bill White looted the water funds and used it for things he wasn't supposed to, which caused the council and the mayor to have to raise water rates so you could fund and have a water system that functions?
We had incredible problems with the quality of water. We had the problems out in Fort Bend, Chasewood, and Briargate, where the water system was tainted and we had to shut it off. So yes, we had to do that because we didn't want to give radioactive or alpha radiated water.
Yeah. Were you part of the group that looted the fund before?
No, I did not loot a fund.
Jack, she's talking about, Gary's talking about Mayor White, who's endorsed you. Is that, do you have the same assessment of Mayor White's leadership as Gary Polland just offered?
I'm proud of his endorsement because he's probably one of the most favorite mayors this city has. A very good businessman, but you got to talk about, to get things done, you need coalitions. And you not only need coalitions on city council, and either publicly or privately, the majority of city council endorsed me for this position. I've got previous mayors, but the county, we can save so much money by working with the county, the commissioner's court, the county judge, and they're all either acquaintances of mine or friends of mine, and you make progress in the city by working together.
Okay, let me ask you this, Jolanda Jones. We're talking about speaking truth to power, which is what people say you do, right? All anyone talks about is, we need to cut this and that. We don't need to spend and whatever. We have Philadelphia to look for, smaller city than we do, $4 billion general fund to our 1.7. Los Angeles, same size city, roughly $6 billion to our 1.7. When is anyone going to speak truth to power and to wealth in terms of talking about where we spend money and where we get money that we need to run a city?
I'm glad you brought that up. And oh, by the way, I have the vast number of endorsements, included elected officials at the state level, at the federal level, at the school district level, and at the county level, just so you know. I just wanted to respond to that. And I actually have former mayors as well, and governors, but that's neither here nor there. One of the problems we have in Houston about a tax base is we have people who live in surrounding areas, and no one wants to talk about that, right? If you don't have people living in the city who can pay taxes, then you don't have a sufficient tax base, which is why it's important. And I know this is something people don't want to talk about, but we need to make the environment here more business friendly. We need to make the environment here important for home ownership and for rental, quite frankly, because people who rent pay taxes, they pay the cost of their rent. And unless and until we stop jacking up fees, which I challenged, and making it difficult for businesses to open or stay open, stop jacking up fees where we have, it's what it is, where we have people who can't afford to pay things and they're closing down their business. Is going to be very hard to get people unless and until we start putting supermarkets in neighborhoods that are disadvantaged where we can have people there, and we're going to have problems.
She's suggesting, I thought, that we needed to have a commuter tax and maybe go after Gary who lives in Bel Air.
I pay taxes there, too.
Yeah, what about, he uses our roads and doesn't pay any taxes. So what do we do about people like Gary? Make plenty of money and pay no taxes to us.
I think the city of Houston can help him be successful to where he pays a lot more in sales tax and help this city that way. But helping businesses, especially small business, become successful. And the city of Houston isn't helping them enough. We've got a good economy, but it can be a lot better.
Philadelphia has a sweet drinks tax to fight children's obesity. Where's that idea coming from? In Philadelphia, but not in Houston?
I don't know. The first I heard of it was here. I'm actually focusing on Houston's problems because...
Well, Dave is looking for more ways to tax the citizens. That's always his interest. Of course. So I guess he's asking you to support a sweet drink tax that goes to the city that, I guess now dedicated to fight obesity as opposed to funding
what's really
other
interesting?
Priorities.
I don't listen to things and just make off-the-cuff decisions about them. It's something I'd have to look at before I landed one way or the other. But that's interesting. I guess it would be akin to like a cigarette tax or something.
Sure.
I'm guessing.
Let me ask you this, Jack. You got the endorsement of the Houston Police Officers Union. So law enforcement, at least the leadership, I don't know how they decide their endorsement. They've endorsed you. So and obviously they've had clashes with Jolanda on a number of occasions. So how do you see your differences with her in terms of law enforcement and its involvement with the city?
That's one of the stark differences. I believe in the goodness of the citizens of Houston. I think 98% of the police force are good people. The men and women in blue protect us every night, and there's interactions, over 1 million interactions with the citizens of Houston, and we can't concentrate on the 2% that do harm. They need to be fired, need to be changed, but there are 98% of dedicated people protecting us day and night in our neighborhoods.
There's a police chief, Jolanda, who you probably know, and you vote on his budget. He could tomorrow start filing Class B misdemeanors as Class Cs and give money to the city of Houston rather than taking 18-year-olds to the county jail. Has anyone urged that on city council, or are we just going to get along as far as police?
He's talking about small quantities of marijuana, I think, just so
I'm talking about all Class B marijuana.
We have not discussed that, nor has it been brought forward in this strong mayoral form of government. However, what I will say is I actually respectfully disagree with Mr. Christie. On the one hand, I believe that the vast majority of officers are good. But I disagree that we have to ignore the percentage that are bad, because a few bad officers can do a whole lot of damage. And so we should not, before this started, we were talking about police shootings. And I think you said 344 to 0 indictments on police shootings over the last 4 years. We do a lot of damage. And when you wrongfully imprison people, or you using excessive force, or you're profiling people, that causes problems, and it breaks up families, and it causes people not to be able to work and to be able to take care of their family, and it causes poverty. And so good police officers have my support. I vote for almost everything they ask for on the city council budget, but I cannot ignore bad police officers, just as I cannot ignore bad city employees, just as I cannot ignore that, because I have an obligation to remedy what's broken.
But they ignore you because you can't put a coalition together to take on their policies, correct?
Actually, I vote for the majority. When they wanted the helicopters, I voted for that. I vote for almost everything police ask. I voted for their budget. The only thing that I don't vote for the most part, is crime lab stuff, because they're just wrong. They don't know what they're doing, and I do not see why we continue to pour money into something that's broken.
Should we shut down the crime lab and let the county deal with it?
I think that's an excellent example of coalition building with the county, because I think the county and the city did a mutual library at one time. So instead of building 2 libraries, they built one together. We need to do more of that with the crime lab. I think there needs to be a bilateral commission putting that together, because...
Well, I think you got the last word, Jack Christie and Jolanda Joe Jones. Thank you so much for coming. I think you're both highly qualified candidates for council. David, we invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Click on the shows, then the local program bar, and pick red, white, and blue, because that's where we're at. Read about our guests, watch the shows, along with our follow-up discussion. Until next time, get informed, get active, and make sure you vote on December 10th.
Or Jolanda Jones.
Or Jack Christie.